Okay, so you want to own a gym. You picture the clang of plates hitting rubber at 6 in the morning. You picture rows of treadmills facing a wall of glass. Your name is on the front door. A lobby full of people chose you over the place down the street. You picture the hiss of a coffee machine. A wall of framed member transformations. A front desk staffer who knows every regular's name. You picture health and discipline and community, sold back to strangers a few dollars at a time. You picture a mirror wall reflecting the whole room back at once. You picture yourself, 6 months in, still opening early. Sounds simple. It is not simple. Not once, not anywhere in this industry. Before you open that door, you need somewhere between $150,000 and $500,000. In some cities, considerably more. That number rarely appears in the ad that got you interested in the first place. The industry you are entering is enormous. That is exactly why the opportunity feels obvious from the outside, before you have looked at a single lease. The global fitness club industry is valued at roughly $121 billion. More than 77 million people hold memberships in the United States alone. That demand is spread across an estimated 205,000 gyms worldwide. Only about a quarter of Americans currently belong to a gym at all. That gap is precisely the pitch every broker will repeat to you. Enormous untapped demand, low saturation, room to grow. Domestically, the sector generates roughly $45 billion a year. It is spread across an estimated 55,000 facilities, all competing for the same finite pool of new members. All of that growth story is true. None of it tells you what happens to the money once it reaches your own front desk. The gap between those two facts is where most first-time owners get quietly ruined. That opening range is not a marketing estimate. It is the floor. A basic build-out runs $30 to $100 per square foot. That depends on how much of the shell you gut and rebuild. On a modest 3,000 square foot space, that alone can land anywhere from $90,000 to $300,000. And that is before a single machine arrives. Equipment costs roughly $75,000 if you buy it outright. Leasing it instead runs $2,000 to $3,000 a month to preserve cash. Then come the costs nobody photographs for the grand opening post. Plumbing upgrades for showers, electrical capacity for heavy machines, ADA compliance work, which alone can add $10,000 to $25,000. None of it is optional, and none of it builds a single new member. Some landlords offer tenant improvement allowances of $10 to $30 per square foot. That sounds generous, until you notice it keeps you dependent on that same landlord for years. A boutique studio can technically open for as little as $5,000 to $50,000, but that lower door buys a different business. Less space, less equipment, less room to survive a bad month. In premium markets like New York, full-service build-outs have run past $750,000. That is before the first membership is sold. Buying the real estate outright pushes the math further still. Commercial property in gym-suitable zones averages $35 to $50 per square foot on top. One documented mid-sized build-out modeled $605,000 in total capital expenditure. That was $250,000 for construction, $250,000 for equipment, and $286,000 in cash reserve. All of it just to survive to a 6th-month break-even. Most first-time owners budget for the first two numbers. Almost none budget properly for the third. Read that again. Nearly $300,000 in reserve capital, spent before the business has proven anything. Compare that to the fantasy sold in the franchise meeting. A slide shows a confident owner in front of a half-built storefront, arms crossed. It looks like the hardest part is behind them. It is not. Nobody puts the personal guarantee on that slide. The hardest part is everything before opening day. Every dollar spent so far has purchased 0 members, 0 dues, 0 proof. This is the first renaming. The lease is not real estate. The lease is the actual product being sold to you. The gym itself is only collateral, sitting on top of it. Here is where it gets interesting. The building was never the difficult part. What you inherit the moment you sign is. Commercial gym leases typically run 5 to 10 years. Landlords routinely demand a personal guarantee, your name, not just the business entities. A security deposit equal to 3 to 6 months of rent is standard. That adds another $15,000 to $90,000 before a single squat rack is bolted down. Franchise instead of building independently, and you inherit royalty payments layered on top of rent. One major national chain now discloses a total investment of $1,282,500 to $5,386,000. You also inherit permit and inspection timelines. They keep charging you rent every day they slip, whether or not you can legally open. None of this appears on the glossy brochure a broker hands you. Business licensing and health permits add smaller mandatory line items, often only $50 to $200 apiece. Yet each one is a condition, not a courtesy. Miss one, and the operation stops cold. Liability insurance is not optional either. One injury claim on gym equipment can outweigh a month of dues from your entire membership base. A torn rotator cuff on a poorly maintained cable machine can cost more than the machine itself was ever worth. Franchise agreements bind you to minimum staffing levels. Equipment refreshes run on a schedule the franchisor sets, not you. Miss a renovation cycle, and you can be found in default of the same agreement that granted you the brand. Here is the trap regulators built, specifically to slow you down. Most states require a 3-day cooling-off period after any member signs. That member can cancel penalty-free, no matter what your sales staff promised. Several states, including Washington, require prepaid dues to sit in a trust account or be backed by a surety bond, so members can be repaid if your gym fails first. New York now requires cancellations processed within 10 business days, accepted online, by mail, or by phone. That closes off the old tactic of forcing members into the building just to quit. A federal click-to-cancel rule was finalized in October 2024. It tried to extend that standard nationwide. It was delayed by legal challenges from the fitness industry itself, the very industry the rule was written to regulate. As of this recording, enforcement is still tied up in court. None of these laws exist to help you. They exist because gym owners, going back decades, built cancellation into a maze on purpose. Legislatures eventually had no choice but to step in. Every rule on this list was written in response to a specific, documented abuse. None of it was written to slow down an honest operator. It was written because too few operators stayed honest. This is the second renaming. You did not sign a lease. You signed a decade-long personal guarantee, and it happens to have a smoothie bar attached to it. So where does the actual money come from once the doors are open? Two very different playbooks exist here. Almost no first-time owner picks consciously between them. The first is high volume, low price. One national chain has held its base membership at $10 a month for 3 decades, deliberately. It pushes a $24.99 upgraded tier, tanning beds, massage chairs, as the real profit engine. That chain has grown to 20.8 million members across roughly 2,900 locations. That is 27% of every gym membership in America, packed into just 4.5% of the country's gym locations. In one recent quarter, it added 1.1 million new members. Roughly 30% of those new signups were former members returning, proof that churn becomes a renewable resource, not a threat. That concentration is not luck, it is the entire design, engineered on purpose from day one. Nobody at that company is embarrassed by the $10 price. It is the whole strategy, stated out loud. A competing budget-tier franchise has grown its own system past $1.45 billion in annual revenue. This is a repeatable formula, not one company's fluke. The second playbook runs the opposite direction. Premium pricing, deep engagement, fewer but wealthier members. One high-end chain charges an average of roughly $190 a month. It still pulled in $2.6 billion in a single year, from only 179 locations. Members spend heavily on top of dues, for training, spa services, and food. In one quarter alone, in-center spending at that chain topped $191 million. Average revenue per membership reached $882. The company raised base dues by another $10 to $30 per member without losing meaningful demand. Most of its members earn above $75,000 a year. They are, in the company's own words, value-sensitive rather than price-sensitive. Those two sentences are the entire premium playbook, spoken plainly by the people running it. Layer a third income stream on top of both playbooks, and the picture sharpens further. Personal training sessions sell separately from dues, split between gym and trainer. That turns your busiest members into a second, higher-margin relationship. Retail, supplements, apparel, branded bottles, adds a thin but nearly free margin stream. The shelf space already sits inside rent you are paying anyway. Corporate wellness partnerships deliver something rarer still. Batches of members who never chose you individually. They churn on a schedule set by someone else's HR department. Every one of these layers exists for the same reason. Base dues were never designed to be enough on their own. A gym selling only dues, at national average pricing, is usually selling below its own break-even point. Everything above the base membership exists to close that gap. Third renaming. The treadmill was never the business you bought. The upgrade ladder built directly above it was always the actual business. And that ladder has to be climbed again every month because the costs beneath it never sleep. Payroll for front desk staff, trainers, and cleaning crews runs continuously. 7 days a week, whether 5 members walk in or 500. Utilities run unusually high. Cardio equipment and climate control compete for the same square footage, all day, every day. Equipment depreciates fast under near constant use. It requires maintenance contracts most first-time owners underestimate at signing. They relearn the lesson in year 2, usually the expensive way, mid-repair, mid-membership cycle. Marketing has to keep buying new members just to replace the ones quietly drifting away. That spend never stops, because the drift never stops either. Every recurring dues charge processed by credit card carries its own transaction fee, multiplied silently across thousands of accounts every single month. None of that alone would sink a business. What makes it dangerous is the ratio underneath it. Industry benchmarks recommend keeping rent below 15% of total revenue. Realistic profit margins land at just 10 to 15% overall, once every line item is paid. Revenue per square foot needs to clear roughly $50 a month for a location to be healthy, a target many first-year owners never actually see. Run the unit economics on one low-cost member, and the ceiling becomes obvious fast. A $10 monthly due, after fees, overhead, and acquisition marketing, leaves only a few dollars of true contribution. That is before payroll is even counted. Multiply that thin margin across a base, where a third quietly disappears every year. The entire structure depends on relentless volume just to stand still. Growth in this business is not ambition, it is maintenance. Every replacement member costs money to acquire. Digital ads, referral incentives, discounted first months. None of that spend is recovered until several months of dues have landed. Cancel inside that window, and the location has effectively paid to lose money on that customer. The data says that is common. Roughly half of all gyms fail within their first 5 years. Undercapitalization sits consistently at the top of the reasons why. Owners who survive tend to know this number before they sign anything, not after. Here is where it gets interesting. That thin margin is not a symptom of poor management. It is the intended mechanism the whole model was built around. Fourth, renaming. The bleed does not clock out when the last member leaves for the night. It runs for 24 hours, same as the sign above the door. Now here is the number the whole industry quietly depends on. It is almost never said out loud at the front desk, in the sales pitch, or in the franchise brochure. Roughly 67% of gym members rarely or never use the membership they are paying for. Half of all new members quit within their first 6 months. A large share keep paying anyway, out of inertia, mild embarrassment, or a hard cancellation process. Average annual retention across the industry sits near 66.4%. Close to a third of the entire membership base churns out every single year. That base gets replaced by a fresh wave of January signups. Separate research on attrition puts it in starker relief still. Most clubs lose 30 to 50% of their members annually. Only about 5% of clubs hold attrition below 30% at all. January alone accounts for roughly 12% of annual enrollments. Roughly 80% of those January joiners are gone again before summer. The average member who does stay visits only about twice a week. Members who never show up in their first 30 days are the strongest predictor of cancellation in the entire dataset. That first month is not a formality. It is the entire relationship, compressed into 30 days, before either side has decided anything. Gyms actually know how to fix this. Group fitness classes measurably cut cancellations by 56%. 2 staff touchpoints a month can cut cancellations by up to 33%. Those 2 levers alone could rewrite the entire attrition curve. Yet most locations invest only lightly in either one. Full engagement is not actually what the balance sheet wants. Now do the opposite math and see why. One detailed analysis modeled what would happen if members trained the way a membership implies they should, 4 times a week. Each club would need approximately 257 people training inside it at the exact same moment. That is more bodies than most buildings can physically hold. And that is before you even count the after-work rush. This is legal. This is normal. It is the industry's foundation, not some accidental failure inside it. Nobody built this on purpose in a single meeting. It simply survived, because it worked. Every gym on your street stays solvent for one reason. Most of the people who joined it are not there right now. Statistically, quietly, most of them never will be again. Walk past any gym window at 2 p.m. on a Tuesday and count the empty machines. That count is not bad luck. It is the model working exactly as intended. Here is the trap underneath the treadmill. You are not really selling fitness. You are selling a promise the business privately needs most buyers to eventually break. Fifth, renaming. Your margin is not built from the members who show up. It is built from the ones who don't, and keep paying regardless. Understand who actually walks through the door, if you want to understand why this works so smoothly. Roughly 44% of gym goers attend at least twice a week. About 32% join specifically to lose weight. That goal is emotionally motivated at sign-up. Statistically, it is likely to fade within months. long before the fat ever does. Nearly 44% say they prefer training with a partner. That is exactly why Bring a Friend promotions are everywhere. 2 enrollments now are worth more than 1 enrollment that gets used consistently later. None of this is cynicism dressed as strategy. It is simply what the intake form has always measured, whether any single owner chose to notice or not. This mechanism is not a new invention. It is older than almost every gym currently open in your city. In the 1950s, a bodybuilder born Victor Lanadinardo in Rochester, New York, built the first true national gym chain. The country knew him as Vic Tanny. He grew past 80 locations coast to coast, grossing roughly $15 million a year at the peak. That figure alone made him one of the wealthiest men in fitness. Tanny did not invent exercise. He invented the financial machinery underneath it, the prepaid long-term membership contract, sold by commission-only staff trained to close hard and fast. New regional sales targets were set every single day. Contracts ranged from $185 for 6 months to $360 for a so-called permanent 7-year commitment. A standalone lifetime membership cost $339. Starting in 1962, Tanny shifted to franchising his clubs outright. That traded direct ownership for faster expansion, funded by other people's capital. He poured roughly $2 million a year into advertising. The entire structure depended on new contracts arriving faster than old ones expired or collapsed into complaints. By 1958, Tanny lived in a $220,000 mansion with 12 separate phone lines. That was personal wealth, built directly on other people's unused annual dues. The pressure his sales floors put on customers drew legal scrutiny. In one Cook County courtroom, a blind man sought release from a $385 contract. He said he was misled into signing it. Aggressive tactics elsewhere pushed New York's Attorney General to act. He imposed a formal fair practices code across the entire industry. It was one of the first times a state government had regulated a gym as a financial product, not as a fitness product. Here is where it gets interesting. The same mechanism that built Tanny's empire is also the one that broke it. Rapid expansion, funded by dues not yet collected, combined with thin actual capital, the company could not absorb a real slowdown. By the late 1960s, the whole chain collapsed into bankruptcy. Tanny died in 1985. The Los Angeles Times remembered him in its obituary headline, not as an athlete, but plainly as the first big gym chain developer. That was accurate. The chain itself had already been gone for roughly 2 decades. The gyms closed. The mechanism he built did not. It simply changed hands, changed logos, and kept running underneath every gym that came after him. 6th renaming. Every gym contract signed today still carries Vic Tanny's signature buried inside it. That includes the $10 discount chain and the boutique studio charging $200. You are not simply joining a gym. You are entering a financial arrangement a bodybuilder engineered 70 years ago. It outlived him by decades. So what happens when that inherited mechanism meets a shock it was never built to absorb? Look at 24-Hour Fitness. Mark Mastrov founded it in 1983 in San Leandro, California. It was originally a single facility, built after his own knee rehabilitation, once called 24-Hour Nautilus. What began as one man's recovery project grew into one of the largest gym chains in the country. By early 2020, it had grown into 445 locations across 14 states. It employed 19,200 people. It looked, from the outside, unbreakable. Then came a stress test no business plan had accounted for. State and local shutdown orders closed every location in March of 2020. Monthly membership revenue was effectively suspended by mid-April. The company later admitted, in court filings, that it had generated no material revenue for nearly 2 months straight. Here is the number that exposes everything. The company entered bankruptcy holding less than $9 million in cash on hand. That was against a footprint of 445 buildings that still owed rent. Every single day, the doors stayed shut. On June 15, 2020, 24-Hour Fitness formally filed for Chapter 11. It secured a $250 million loan from an ad hoc group of lenders just to keep the lights on. It moved in court to reject roughly 135 club leases outright. More than 130 locations closed permanently. Staffing headcount fell by an estimated 60% during the restructuring. The company emerged from bankruptcy on December 30, 2020. It had eliminated $1.2 billion in debt. It had shrunk to fewer than 300 clubs. A company that once looked too big to fail had proven it was never too big to bleed. It handed 95% of its new equity to the lenders who financed its survival. That group included Sculptor Capital, Monarch Alternative Capital, and Cyrus Capital Partners. The mechanism did not disappear once the company emerged either. In 2025, the reorganized company still needed a fresh $305 million credit facility just to refinance near-term debt and fund basic improvements. Notice what did not change through any of it: the lease structure, the personal guarantee expectations, the basic bet that most paying members would keep quietly staying home. Not one of those three things was ever on the table for renegotiation, even inside a bankruptcy court. The company came back leaner, under new ownership, but it ran the identical mechanism that nearly killed it. That mechanism was never the flaw, it was the entire business. The pandemic did not break 24-hour fitness. It simply switched off the one input the business quietly needed and never advertised: absence. Here is the trap laid completely bare. The entire model survives on dues collected from people who are not using the service, not on any given day. The instant everyone stayed home at once, that quiet, structural subsidy vanished overnight, not from quitting individually, from a nationwide shutdown. There was nothing left underneath it but a lease and a payroll obligation that did not pause for anyone. Seventh, renaming. The empty gym floor during the pandemic did not reveal a business that had broken. It revealed the business functioning exactly as it was always designed to. The part nobody was supposed to notice was suddenly visible to everyone at once. So what did you actually buy the day you signed the paperwork to own a gym? Not a wellness brand, however sincerely you meant it to become one. Not a community hub, though for the members who genuinely keep showing up, it can become exactly that. You bought a long-term real estate obligation, personally guaranteed for a decade. It is wrapped around a subscription business. Its healthiest possible customer pays every month and almost never walks through the door. The equipment is real. The trainers are real. The transformation some members genuinely experience under your roof is entirely real. So is the version of you that shows up for it, most mornings, for a while. But the balance sheet underneath all of it depends on a quiet, structural bet. A bet against the very promise printed on the membership card. Vic Tanny placed that bet first. 24-Hour Fitness discovered it had never stopped making it. It learned that even after the bankruptcy that should have taught it otherwise. None of this means you should not do it. Owners who understand the real mechanism can and do run gyms that survive. They chase attendance, instead of quietly hoping to avoid it. They treat the lease as the primary liability it always was. They budget for the third of members leaving every year before it surprises them. They can even genuinely change the people who walk through their doors. But that success comes from seeing the machine clearly. From the personal guarantee on page 1 to the churn model buried on the last page. It does not come from believing the fantasy printed on the thumbnail poster in the lobby. This is the final renaming. You did not buy a gym. You bought a recurring payments company that happens to store barbells. Its survival was never measured in reps completed. It was measured, month after month, in how many people quietly stopped coming and kept paying anyway. That is not a flaw hiding in the business. For most owners, it is the business itself.